energy and sustainability technical centers of expertise. The idea is that our liaison with Searle, Annette Stumpf, has pointed out these 3 technologies that have been in development, BuildingSMART, COBie, and BUILDER. And so this is to give an overview of these technologies with the intention that we can best integrate them into the enterprise approach to design and construction. So Kelly, do you want to talk about our 3 presenters?
Yes, good morning. We are going to start this presentation with Francois Grobler speaking about BuildingSMART. He's our leading researcher on this, followed by Mariangelica Carrasquillo-Mangual, who's working on COBie with Bill East. And Bill East is currently out right now, but he has a series of COBie webinars coming up in September, and we'll send you guys information on that. And then Lance Murano, who's going to present on Builder. Francois, would you like to begin?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for getting up so early where you are on the west. The introduction that I would like to make is essentially to say that this is a topic that has been very dear to me for a very long time. And in the interest of full disclosure, I want to say that in 1988, I wrote a dissertation that was titled Object-Oriented Representation of Unified Construction Information. And so this is where we are now, and I'm very excited to talk about this. What we're going to try to answer today are these questions. What are the opportunities for improvement using these technologies? What is BIM? What is openBIM? There's an initiative in the UK that I think we should take note of. What is BuildingSMART in a little more detail? What are these acronyms? And then I'm going to try to give you the context of where COBie and BUILDER that Angelica Lance is going to talk about. And then finally try to address some of the questions, what should we do? And what should we do, I think, has to relate to this fact that the United States Army Corps of Engineers is the world's largest engineering organization. I think that it is time for us to take some leadership. The opportunities for improvement, when I thought about that, I thought about this famous quote from President Reagan in 1987. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I think many of you might remember that. And it has to do with tearing down the walls in our context between the different stovepipes, so to speak, that we're working in. Just two more, another quote, aligning the interests of those who design and construct an asset with those who subsequently use it. Is the purpose of the UK government, and I think if you think about it carefully, this is very important, aligning the interests of those who design and construct an asset with those who subsequently use it. I don't think we're doing a very good job of doing that. I think we tend to see ourselves as the government, as a customer, and everyone else is out there, and what their interests are of less interest to us, and I think that that has to translate into what the U.S. government talks about, I mean the UK government talks about a push-pull situation. Patrick McLamey says BIM is the first truly global digital construction technology and will soon be deployed in every country in the world. It is a game changer, and we need to recognize it, that it is here to stay. And finally, Winston Churchill during the, or after the Second World War, reportedly said, "You can always count on the Americans to get it done right." And does everyone know what follows? After they've tried everything else. So I hope that that we have tried everything else at this time and we're ready to do it right. Tear down these walls. The walls we're talking about are these ones. You probably have seen this kind of slide in different ways. It's sort of like the musical chairs that you start at one side, and as you whisper in the next person's ear, by the time that you get to the end of it, it's a whole different story. And so this is a matter of trying to connect all these things in ways that's interactive and that that the communication goes both ways. As you might expect, there are all kinds of deficiencies as a result of these barriers. But at the bottom there, I think I just want to point out that I'm beginning to see the Corps of Engineers' responsibility very much in looking at this waste of resources that's happening out there, and the fact that we'll have to be building more with fewer dollars, and we have to do it in order to stay competitive in the world arena. I just listened this morning to the debt ceiling that has to be raised in 6 weeks, otherwise the government is going to stop functioning. And as you know, the debt ceiling is 16.7 trillion, and in addition to that, there are some of the other mandates that supposedly add up to over $100 trillion. So I think it's clear that in the future we have to do more with less. And this is the way I think we can address that to some extent, and we'll look at the extent in a little bit. The frictionless flow of information is what we're really after, and so if you start with at the top there with a design, construction documents, and construction contract and commissioning, those ones are the traditional arena where we're working in, although we are spanning many of the other aspects now also. The point is that as we develop documents and contracts and so forth, that we want to deposit information that can be used later in the life cycle, and we want to take out information at a later point in the life cycle that would be useful to us. And this is possible now using this IFC openBIM. It is a structure of information that is designed to carry the geometry of the building as well as tangible and intangible information in a way that it stays unified and that it can be used by others later. Now, not all information needs to be put in there, but the information that is used in the later operations. So if you go down a circle clockwise, start with design and construction, or maybe earlier under the project program, and then you want to be able to later on look when you're doing the FM and space management, did that actually conform to the program? Or if you go further down, the master planning wants to know how did that work out and how can we do our next program better and so on. It's a matter of data that we don't have at the moment, and I'll make reference to that in a second again. So what is BIM and what is openBIM? I want to say first what it is not. BIM is not 3D CAD. I think many vendors and practitioners are thinking about BIM as 3D CAD, and that is not the case. And openBIM is not Autodesk or Revit or Bentley's proprietary formats. openBIM is a vendor-neutral format to exchange shared information of the project and the facility as it moves along in its life cycle. And openBIM is unified information that serves as a resource for decision making and so on over the entire life cycle. So I have a more formal definition of openBIM here. I don't going to read it, but it's a digital representation. It's shared knowledge. It's the basis for decisions. It's based on the premise of better collaboration, and it's an open standard for interoperability. So why open building information models? What does it really do for us? And owners, and I believe that we're doing the same at the moment, is that we're beginning to understand the value of data, and especially the life cycle values. We're rebelling against being held captive by software vendors, that you are locked into this proprietary format and you can't use that new neat technology that someone else had come up with. And we're realizing that you're paying for sub-optimization in those stovepipes or walls that we looked at earlier. The designer optimized their work so that they make the most profit, and the construction company does the same, and so on and so forth. And this is sub-optimization of these stovepipes at the cost of the overall project functionality and cost. And I think we're really understanding the value of satisfying our customers, in other words, the occupants of the building and the users of the building eventually. And we need to look at ways to increase the certainty of our construction life cycle. We have to have less risk and less errors in the process. Now, Kurt recommended that the way to do that is to build virtually, test, and perfect the design before you physically build the building. And this is indeed what we can do with the IFC model, or also called openBIM. It is a virtual building. It has geometry, and it has all those other kinds of information that you need. And this is available right now. What is not completely available are agreements between users of what is all the information that they want in that circle that goes around the life cycle. So some parts of that had been defined, but not all of it. But the real guts of the model, so to speak, with the openBIM is there, and it's a matter of deciding by users who needs to, what is needed downstream, for example, that upstream designers or others need to be put into that stream. openBIM is a shared conduit, as I said, and the high performance sustainable building engineering regulation that you're pursuing at the moment gave me some thought, some food for thought. So if we look at that, I believe that that's how the teams are organized. If you look at say the life cycle cost analysis, how can we realistically do life cycle cost analysis if we don't really have operational information and data from operational information down the line? Or how can we improve or know that our energy modeling is indeed accurate and correct if we
Francois,
don't
you might have
that,
to go back one
that
slide.
measurement
I think we got
and verification that's coming down the line. So there's a great need for interacting and feeding information back and forth within this situation. And so my suggestion would be that that you should seek within this context where work of this type is going on at the moment, and be sure that
Francois, it looks like something happened with the audio. Do you want to just check that your mic and everything is plugged in, or that it didn't hit?
That we're talking about. One other comment at the bottom with the engineering regulations. I know that consultants are.
Thanks, Mariangelica.
Hello, can you hear me now?
While we're waiting, yeah, you're back on. I'm not sure what
Okay.
happened, but I can hear you loud and clear.
Well, I think I leaned forward against my switch here that muted the button, so inadvertently I muted it. How much have you heard of what I had to say about this slide?
So we had just started this slide.
Okay. Well, I'll try to repeat quickly then. The organization of your tasks, I think, are arranged like in the green boxes up there by task groups. And the point that I wanted to make here is that in order to do these things that you're setting out to do, life cycle cost analysis, for example, how can you do that correctly and accurately without knowing what the operational costs of similar buildings and previous buildings are downstream? We need the data, and the same, for example, in energy modeling. How can we know that our energy modeling and simulations are correct if we don't have the measurement and verification downstream? So there's great need for bidirectional flow of information here so that we can do these tasks that we're having here better. And the point that I think is important here is that I'm sure that you are aware of what's going on now through this series of presentations that we have, but I think that the consultants who are working on the engineering regulations down here should be very much aware of this also. And in later part of what I'm going to talk about, I try to make the point that I think we should take fairly aggressive action here. Let's see, I think something happened here. This slide moved in the process. Okay, so earlier on excuse me, I need to put this on, there we go. Earlier on we talked about the ability to control cost versus the cost to make a change. And the curve at the moment looks a little bit like this, and unfortunately at the end we always have a rising effort essentially in the litigation phase. So we need to change that. We need to do earlier procurement, better manpower planning, no rework, all those kinds of things, and we would like to shift this curve to the left. And by doing so, we do have some time savings over the typical way of working, as well as no litigation phase. So that's what we're trying to do. One other point that I wanted to make, sharing risk. As you know, in a simplistic way, one can say that there is an actual cost of the project, of the contract cost, and the contractor adds some risk contingency, and the more risk, the higher the addition is, and therefore the more the project costs us. So there's a great incentive, I think, if we want to really reduce cost, to look at this item of managing risk and sharing risk, so that the contractor does not have to add that large amount of risk contingency. And so the picture looks a little bit like this, that we may actually are able to reduce the actual cost because of greater efficiency and greater risk or less risk and contingency. Okay, so how much improvement is possible? I can give you the case of this UK BIM initiative that, among other things, conducted 5 pilot projects to test what savings they were getting. And they did that in a specific district where they had to build 5 new penitentiaries. And these are well-known designs, and the construction cost and so on are very well known. And 3 of those 5 projects are now complete. And they have proven that they've saved between actually 15, 17, and 19% in the cost over the expected cost based on previous experience, using this more integrated way of working. Just one interesting part of that is that they also expect to save millions of pounds in guard personnel cost over the life cycle because of the way that they interacted with the users in the design and so forth. They realized that that they can do with fewer guards if they make minor changes to the standard design, and that really is not included in the 15 to 19% cost. But I think the point that's important here to realize is that this is their so-called level 2 integration BIM level. This is using current tools without the full integrated openBIM. This is, in other words, things that can be done right now. This is tools that they've used right now. So anyone can do that if they do that, go to that effort. So a little bit more about the UK initiative. I want to point out here that this fellow here, Francis Maud, is apparently the #2 person in the government there. He's just under the Prime Minister, and he is supporting and saying these things that is written there. It says this government's 4-year strategy for BIM implementation will change the dynamics and behaviors of the construction supply chain, unlocking new, more efficient and collaborative ways of working. This whole sector adoption of BIM will put us at the vanguard of a new digital construction era and position the UK to become the world leaders in BIM. And that, as I said before, that sounds like a challenge to me to the world's largest engineering concern. I think it will be very worth your while to look at some of these things on this website, the BIM task group. This is the actual live website now, and you can see all kinds of information, resources there. You can see COBie UK, data drops, and all those kinds of things. There's a lot of information here that would be of interest to you. Their partners, there are some of the tests that they've done under here. There's news and so on. I could show you a little bit of these things, but I think in the interest of time, I'll probably have to move on. I do want to, let me just get this one. Oops, let me just go back here. Okay, I'd like to just show you a little bit of Mark Bu's presentation, and that explains this level, the different levels, the level 2 and so on. Mark Bu is the fellow that's really orchestrating this whole initiative, and it is a very large initiative, in fact, and most of the funding goes into working with industry to come up with tech terminology, standard terminology for things, standard processes, and so forth. And some of this goes into the actual work. So this is based on some documentation that might be interesting to you also. You can see this is comes from a low carbon construction report and building information modeling working party strategy paper. So this is the result of very deliberate planning and so on. And the hypothesis that they're working on is that government as a client can derive significant cost improvements in cost value and carbon performance through the use of open shareable information. I think that here is the push and pull side that we talked about earlier. I think on the pull side, the government needs to know how to be a good buyer of data. Data now is very important, and so we're still thinking of us as buying buildings, but in fact we are buying buildings as well as data and services, and that pull side should be clearly defined. That I have to do it consistently, and leave the how to the supply chain, as it says there. On the supply chain side, early warning is necessary to give direction of where we're going and give assistance and clear indications of what the milestones and expectations are, as well as organizing for training and develop the methods and documentation in order to do that. So their BIM 2 level is going to be completed by 2016. What means is that they will have done everything that they want to do in terms of the current technology, and then at that time switch over to the integrated technology. So here you have the diagram that shows what they're doing. Level 2 is sort of in the middle of the page at the top there, and you can see this is what they're using right now, and perfecting all the data sources and things of that sort, so that by 2016 they'll be completely doing it this way. And then in 2016 they'll switch over and doing the full integrated interoperable data in that full circular motion that we looked at earlier, being web-based and cloud-based and all those kinds of things. This is the organizational structure. We're not going to go through that, but you'll see there are stakeholder groups, delivery groups, and so on and so forth. Here's Mark Bew, who made this presentation, and so forth. So very comprehensive and deliberate in what they're doing. Let me get out of here. Okay, so I think that I'm going to move on here because I see my time is running short. What is BuildingSMART? We're talking about BSI typically for BuildingSMART, BuildingSMART International. BSA, as you know, is BuildingSMART Alliance, which is the American chapter of BuildingSMART International. It's a not-for-profit organization. It's international chapter-based, and the chapters have representation in the various organizational parts of it, which we can look at in a little while. It's international, as we said, really all over the globe now. Proposed chapters in India, Brazil, Chile, and Russia. China just became a full-fledged member about a month ago. And very, very interested in that at this point. The BuildingSMART details, I had intended to do the vision and mission for you, but I think that you probably have a good sense of what that is at this point. It is essentially internationally creating a forum where people can get together and work together to make these necessary standards on an international basis. We'll look at the organization in a little bit, and the customers are, really as you would expect. It's all of the main participants to the process. Products or the outcome of these efforts are essentially listed there. It is firstly building processes, and the building processes are analyzed and agreed upon by users like yourselves, and documented in something that can be reproducible and discussed and so forth. And the outcome of that then is that it eventually goes into an exchange requirement where all of the information that needs to be passed back and forth in that process are explicitly defined. What is mandatory, what is optional, what formats and constraints there are on the information, and for example, what kind of classification system do you use for this particular data. So it's well-defined information of what is necessary for that process, as well as recognizing what information is necessary downstream to drive the downstream processes. The other product is the IFD, stands for International Framework for Dictionaries, and that's sort of a fancy way of talking about catalogs and e-catalogs and how to define terminology for it, and to provide unique identifiers. The GUID stands for a globally unique identifier for each of these terms, which then can be translated in all kinds of languages, or even in regional languages. And on the West Coast, people talk about things differently than on the East Coast in some cases. And that is part of that way that with a GUID that's unique, you can identify the exact term across languages and terminology. And finally, the product templates there is standardized templates that the industry users as well as the producers agree upon, so that when they publish their data, they at least publish it in that format and content, so that users can compare oranges and oranges, not apples and oranges. And then in the next item, all these things are going to formal standards. The IFC model, or the IFC BIM, openBIM, we talked about already. This has been an ISO standard now in various phases for probably a decade almost. And the latest version is the 2013 update of that is more complete and more, covers a wider scope than any of the previous ones. The model view definition. These model view definitions are partial or subsets of the IFC overall BIM, so that when you do software, you don't have to deal with all of the information. You deal with this model view definition, or MVD, which then is only a partial a subset of the overall model and all of the overall data, so that the software then deals with that information and not with data that's irrelevant to it. It makes implementation much less expensive and more expedient. Certification and validation. I'd like to just skip out here for a moment and take you to the modification. It looks like I lost that now. Yeah. Okay, the certification and validation that I quickly wanted to show you is a site that I previously signed on, but apparently it logged me off. I'm not going to take this site to log on, but on this site you have all of the software that have been certified by BuildingSMART, Revit and AutoCAD and Bentley and so on are all mentioned there. Over a period of time, there had been something like 60 or so software vendors that had actually been certified in various degrees of completion. And I want to point out that this certification happens against a particular model view definition. So if you buy a particular piece of software, it'll only do that subset of, oh, here we are, in the, so this is what it looks like inside there, and you can see the latest entry here is 11 July 2013, and it says next certification for IFC view 2.0 export. This is the export view that has been granted to Tekla Structures as well as Revit MPE. So that means that they now conform and can export export correctly the data that's specified in this coordination view, which is essentially a specific model view, but it's a comprehensive one because it contains all of the information to do coordination in. Okay, I'm going to move on here. I think the other ones are, I can skip some of that. The organization looks approximately like that. There's an international council that kind of leads the organization. Each of the chapters have representation there. There's an XCOM, and there are a few administration people. The work is organized in rooms. They call it a process room. That's where people talk about how to do reference processes. And these reference processes then are supported by the product room, where the right terminology is agreed and e-catalogs and so forth are developed. And then it goes down to the technical room, where these things then are translated into MVDs, those partial views of the model, of the overall model, that then is implemented in a way that contains all of the requirements and so forth that's defined by the process room and the product room. And eventually these go into international standards. As it stands at the moment, the IFC standard is this one right here, ISO 16739 of 2013. That is the IFC 4 data model. And then the Technical Committee 59, Subcommittee 13 is called the Construction and Civil Engineering Information Group. And a lot of the standards that we're working with in this context it goes into that area. And then finally, I think important to you is to know that TC, Technical Committee 211 of ISO, do the geographical systems, and that is of course the important for GIS, and we're collaborating with OGC in that context. Okay. What is BuildingSMART trying to accomplish? I think we've talked about these things pretty extensively already. I'm not going to continue about that. So I'm going to switch on here and let's see. So the development that's happening at the moment is sort of summarized here. There's one that should be turned green. The green ones are the ones that are prioritized by this international user group. And energy analysis at the top second row there, you can see that's well, their site analysis, important one also that I think is of interest to you. But that wasn't rated a high priority in this situation because there wasn't any country or chapter that wanted to push that. So in a context of what you might consider, or users might consider, is to actually step in there and do this work in this context, and it gets exposure to the international community and becomes an international standard. Infrastructure, I just want to mention that infrastructure is now part of the BuildingSMART scope. We only started it recently. We're going to do it using XML so that it can be implemented very quickly and then later become part of the full IFC model. We have an MOU with OGC, and working together on things that fall in that sort of overlap area between GIS and the building or infrastructure side. And there's quite a bit of overlap where you need to define how things will flow from one side to the other, so that what you end up with would be a user experience that's seamless between facilities or buildings and infrastructure or GIS. Infrastructure, I'm not going to go into this, of course, but this is the infrastructure unique side, and then infrastructure also has a building side that's or facility side that's slightly different. There are lots of projects identified. Is a master list of those projects, and these projects, the intent of this at this point is to take this to the UK government as well as other governments to seek the funding to actually execute those. But again, these are projects that will enhance the agreement of things so that you don't have less confusion when you exchange things and not essentially developing the capability. There are some capabilities that needs to be added to the IFC BIM, but it's sort of the rarity rather than the norm at this point of what is needed. Most of the things in the model is generic and flexible enough to handle just about anything. Okay, so what is IFC? IFC, Information for Construction, and it is formerly known as Industry Foundation Classes. And you can think of it as a digital building block for openBIM. These IFC modules or objects represent the modules of an assembled building, and by assembling these modules you actually build the virtual model of the project, and you can do simulation and things of that on it already. Important, I want to mention that the IFC really is transparent to the software users. The software users should not pay attention to IFCs as such, but they do need to understand how to construct and inform a virtual building correctly, and that is where most of the training and changes in culture and so on needs to happen, so that when they do, for example, a design or they specify something, that they need to know what information to go in there and what is optional and mandatory and those kinds of things. Okay, how are IFCs developed? This is very briefly how this goes, but I see I'm almost running out of time here. So you have the IDMs, we talked about that, and the IFDs, that forms the exchange requirements. That leads to the model view definitions. Eventually, those are mapped to IFCs, and the software implementations are then built using those that view of the IFC model to build software. And at the top row here, the green MVD, you can see IFC BIM validation. You can do automatic BIM validation if for a specific MVD. And on that website that I showed you for certification and validation, there is in fact a free capability where you can where a user can send an IFC BIM model to, and it'll return all the errors, or if it is indeed a fully formed, well-formed model, it will say so. And incidentally, there's nothing that's recorded on that website. It just gives you the feedback and then destroys any memory of the specific project that you submitted. Okay, there's some more details of how these things work, and some yet more details. But I think we need to go on to where COBie fits. And I quoted Bill East here that said, COBie delivers a higher quality product at each project stage by standardizing the information exchanges that are already in our contract. So there are already information exchanges required, but this is a way to make sure that it actually gets there and it can be tested that it is there. And so where COBie fits within the overall process is that it fits very well, because COBie is in fact a subset of IFC, and it is mappable directly to IFC, and there are utilities that have been made available that could be done. But there's one drawback, and that is that COBie does not have geometry. and it does not have the global unique identifiers. And these globally unique identifiers are necessary if you put it back into a CAD model, for example, or a BIM model, to know which data goes to which object and that kind of thing. It is an official BuildingSMART MVD, and so on and so forth. And it's been incorporated in this latest IFC4, and there's a group now that's going through that again to make sure that it satisfies all the international requirements for that. So very much part of the IFC development and BuildingSMART plan. And where does Builder fit? Builder's I just wrote that down, Sustainment Management System is a great example of innovative web-based software applications to utilize COBie and IFC openBIM data as it's provided. You'll hear more about that in a minute, but the point is that Builder is indeed one of those software applications that is making use of a particular model view definition. In this case, it's the COBie model view definition to provide the data that's necessary for driving the maintenance and operations phase. Okay, so Lance will talk more about that. One last question: why is it important to do this international effort? And it is indeed because we are working internationally, and we're using software that comes from international vendors. And the construction supply chain is international. So I think that that's one of the things that we in North America had, we've become a little bit isolationist in a way, and I think that we need to realize that the world is becoming more and more international, and therefore the way we work needs to become more and more international. So what should we do? Participate, contribute, and so on, and ensure that we are represented in these international standards as they evolve. And the question of why we should participate, I mentioned that the U.S. have resource problems now and in the future, more so probably. We'll have to do more with less, and so with less funding for developing our own solutions, I think it would be smart to look at international efforts and leverage international efforts to get things done that we need to do. Okay, so finally, I think that I want to close with a thought that we, as the world's largest engineering organization, should really lead the world in openBIM. And I don't think that we've done that
you for a second, but
aggressively enough. So that's the thought that I would like to leave with you. Think like a world leader. Look at the processes and match that with the other projects that we have listed. Do trial participation. There is a project going on at the moment, the BPI project, that looks at the planning information exchange. And I think that might be of interest to you. Starting other use-case projects that's not in the plan at the moment, that's certainly possible. I think we should also think about auditable pilots like the UK, where they definitively document savings as they occur. And the infrastructure in
All right, we're going to open it up
BuildingSMART
for
is essentially
questions.
blank
If
at
you'd
this
like
point.
to
So there's
type
great,
your questions
leverage
into the box
opportunity to
in the
do
middle of the
kind of
screen,
infrastructure that is
Lindsay
of
or I will
interest
read those off for Francois
us.
to answer.
And I think we should think outside, excuse me? I think that we should think outside the Army and think, okay, thank you. And I think we should consider both the push and the pull sides of this equation. I think
So Francois, the first question we
side,
have is
perhaps,
from Patricia. How does BuildingSMART differ?
but not the pull side so very well, because I think we need to pull industry into this and plan how to do that carefully. And then finally, we have to change the construction industry. I'm very serious about that with our resources dwindling, we have to do more with less, and we have to protect our planet in a sustainable way, and I don't know that we can do that without actually changing the construction industry. So with that said, thank you very much. I'm done, and I am willing and eager to answer some questions if you have any. I think I will get out here now and give you back the control. So you should be able to share your screen now. How does BuildingSMART different from Builder? Builder is a specific piece of software that does a specific function in the life cycle of the building, and Lance will explain that or demonstrate that actually in great detail to you. BuildingSMART is a standards-making organization that's working on standards or for reference processes. And if you do follow these reference processes, then you can expect to have software that will support those reference processes. And I think that, I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I think that's
Another question we have is, what is
DSA's
DSA's policy on contractual ownership of the model's information? Is there typically a best practice for
While we're waiting for more questions, I might add to the previous question that from the perspective of BuildingSMART, what the Builder software, implemented that model view definition that relates to that part of the life cycle that needs to be informed by the previous participants. In other words, they put in information during the design and construction process, and then by the time that it gets to operations, this piece of software sucks in that information in a defined format, which is a model view definition, a partial model of the IFC BIM that has been defined through this effort of COBie. Any more questions? I cannot answer that question. Maybe Mariangelica can, because I don't know what that is at this point. I believe that if I can, suggest that that with building, with COBie information becoming more utilized and mandatory, that information certainly will be the ownership of the government or owned by the government. I can say that in other countries where this has been practiced, there has been really no trouble with designers to actually hand over the ownership of the model and copyrights of the designs and those kinds of things to the people who pay for it. So it is a matter that can be addressed, and designers have been quite willing to do that. HOK, that I quoted the CEO earlier on, is a company that's working worldwide, and they are actually working in this way in many countries.
I'm not aware of
any by their own preference,
language
and they
who owns
have
the data,
no problem in
but
handing
according to
the
how
design in its entirety
we preach,
over,
if you will
so
say,
they don't
to use
see
this
any
data,
ownership
it's,
in the
to use
design.
it
It's a
in
product
the way that
or a
is used
service that
now.
they deliver to
We are
whoever pays
not
for it.
about to change the context of it. It's like, just imagine like how it is now. Who owns the data now? The person doing, they pass it along. It's the same thing. You're just passing along a different format of the data, if you will say. So right now, I mean, the designer design and he give everything forward. And at the end of the day, the owner have all the data. I don't think it is any different, but language-wise, I'm not aware of any of those regulations. I think I have heard, and the problem is not as much as ownership, but as liability. And that I have heard like very, very little about, but I know that's where most of the concerns lean. It's more liability than ownership.
If there aren't any other questions, then we can move on to the COBie presentation that Mariangelica will be presenting to us.